Ellie, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate that intro, and thank you to you, Lauren and Patty, for again for uh, your help on all this and for offering this opportunity for all of us. So it's really great to be back. I've really enjoyed these so far, and it's great to see some familiar faces and also some new faces. So hi to everyone. I'm excited to get going today.
Excellent.
So I guess I'll just dive in. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about more specific methods and techniques for realization. Um, I'm going to do a little brief recap of the last one, and then that'll lead us into the conversation today. But again, after every slide, I'll pause. I'll say a few things. I'll pause. We can chat. We can have a conversation. And then we'll move on to the next slide. And then if we have time at the end, or maybe sometime in between, Lauren and I talked about possibly doing a little demonstration, a little guided meditation. So we'll see where that leads. Um, I guess I'll start sharing my PowerPoint. Okay, so we're going to start here with harmonizing our multidimensional being. So last time we talked about there are four aspects to our being. There's the body, the heart, the mind, and the spirit. And all four of those aspects are important. They matter. Together they really are one. They're one system. Um, but each one, I think, has its own function, and it's important to really understand each one. Um, we are the spirit. That's the most important thing. We are the spirit. And we have a mind, we have a heart, we have a body. And when we realize that we are spirit, then we see that the mind, the heart, and the body are also made of spirit. They're the same substance. And in that way, they're all one. But each of these dimensions of our being, you could say there's four dimensions of our being. Each of these layers um, operates on a different vibratory scale. So the body, you could say, is the most dense aspect of the self. The heart, which is kind of the realm of energy, is the next less dense uh, layer of our being. The mind is the realm of pure vibration or the causal realm. That's the finest layer of our being. And then the spirit, which is what we really are, is vibrationless. It's pure awareness. And so the human experience is an incredible thing because we are operating on all levels of reality simultaneously. We have one aspect of us in every dimension um, all the time. But depending on our level of awareness, we might not know that. And so that's what the journey of self-realization is all about. It's about bringing harmony and balance to all four of these aspects and being aware of all four of these aspects simultaneously, being able to operate in all dimensions at the same time. And we are already doing that, whether we know it or not. So I want to go a little bit into this. Each of these four dimensions of our being, you could say, is on a spectrum. The body is on a spectrum from tensed to relaxed. When we're operating from ego, the body is tense. When we're operating from soul or awareness or an awakened state, the body is relaxed. If we're in ego, the heart generally tends to be closed. If we're in soul, the heart is open. And that means that energy can flow. We feel our feelings. all that good stuff. We feel connected to others in the world as well as ourselves. When we're in ego, the mind is busy or loud. There's lots of thoughts, there's rumination, there's false beliefs, things like that. When we're in soul, the mind is quiet or empty, and thoughts can come and go and they don't get stuck. When we're in ego, the spirit is essentially unaware. We are unconscious. And when we are in soul, we are aware. The spirit is awake and aware. Again, this is a spectrum. It's not so black and white. Everybody falls on, a range. So the heart doesn't ever fully close, right? The spirit is never fully unaware. There's always some level of awareness that's present. We can't be fully unconscious. There's always a spark of awareness within us, and that's why the journey of self-realization is inevitable. It's inevitable that awakening will happen for everybody because that's the core of what we are. Um, so it's a spectrum. But the idea is that when we're approaching self-realization, we want to go in the way that the arrow is pointing. We want to go towards the soul. So we want to relax the body, open the heart, quiet the mind, and be aware. And for those of you who remember my diagram of the ego, transcending the ego from last time, there's sort of three layers of the ego, and these correspond to these layers of the self as well. So the outermost layer of the ego was defense mechanisms. And I would say that's more aligned with the level of the body because tension is the body's way, tension is the ego's way of defending against feelings. So if you notice that we have a lot of different defense mechanisms, but the body is, if it's tense, that means we're constricted. That means that energy can't flow. And usually, when we're in ego consciousness, you'll notice that there's some tension in the body. With the heart, it's subconscious feelings, right? That's the layer of the ego that's tied to the heart. So when the heart's closed, we have all these feelings that are trapped inside. So we want to open them so that they can flow and release. And when the mind, the layer of the ego that's tied to the mind is false beliefs. So when we're in ego, we have all sorts of thoughts and beliefs and assumptions that we make about life. And that's what keeps it busy and that's what keeps us in ego. So the idea is we want to move towards relaxation, openness, quietude, and awareness. Um,
There was a
any
comment.
questions about that? Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a comment asking, would you say that the mind equals the ego in this model?
No, I wouldn't. Ultimately, the ego, the origin of the ego is on the mind level. The ego originates on the level of mind. Because it's ultimately just a mental construct. It's an idea. If you go deep enough into the ego, if you go past the defenses, past the subconscious feelings, the innermost layer of the ego is these false beliefs or this identity as a separate self. And that identity is fundamentally mental, but the ego has its roots in the other three, the other two aspects of ourselves as well. So it's not purely mental, as also the ego shows up in the body as tension and it shows up in the heart as subconscious feelings, and it closes the heart. So I hope that answers that.
I want to know if you could explain further this concept of quieting the mind in relationship
Yeah.
to neurodivergent busy minds.
Okay. So here's the thing about the mind. Again, all of these things, they seem like doings, right? If I say relax the body, open the heart, quiet the mind, be aware, they sound like things to do. And in some sense, they're actions to take, but they're really undoings. They're really actions that are designed to bring us into being. So they're not really doings. They're more like undoings. But from the ego's perspective, they seem like things that need to happen. But that's only because the ego is already doing things like busying the mind, tensing the body, closing the heart, that we don't even notice that that's being done. We're just on autopilot with the ego. And we don't realize that the ego is actively doing these things all the time. So it seems like a doing, but it's really an undoing. And that brings me to answering the question, which is to quiet the mind, ideally, you don't really want to mess with it. There are some people who say, you know, stop the thoughts or change the thoughts. Um, and that's okay. That's a good strategy, but that's ultimately not going to lead to this awareness or the quietude of mind because the mind, you don't want to argue with it. You don't want to fight with it. If you try to stop it, it will just get reinforced. It gets stronger the more you try to tamp down these thoughts. So the idea is the way to quiet the mind is to be aware of the mind and not believe it. Don't believe the stories that it's telling you. You can use the mind as a tool, but don't believe that that's what you truly are, that that's your essence. So, there are a lot of meditation techniques that say, quiet the mind. Every time you hear a thought, just stop it or replace it with another thought, that kind of thing. Those are good strategies, but at the end of the day, you can't fight with the mind. You can't beat it. Um, Instead, just try to back up from it and watch it without getting attached to it or identified with it. And that's how you quiet the mind. That's what I've found.
Sounds like how you described this, that expression, what you resist persists.
That's right.
And and the very nature of the mind is to think, judge, and analyze. So getting upset with the mind is like getting upset with water for being wet. It's just its nature,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. That's right.
And I like this, that noticing part. And Ellie and I will talk, we've talked about this process that I have found many teachers do, and I use in my practice is notice, accept, choose again. And so that first step, Ellie, is notice everything is neutral and we give it meaning. And the meaning we give it is usually through the lens of our subconscious. We're meaning makers. And
Hmm.
so when you believe in the story, when you identify with your thoughts, then you're at the effect of them. And when you believe in them or believe in the story, you make it real. So what I heard you say is, if you observe them, that's the transformation. That's where the alchemy comes from. Because now, if you're observing your thoughts, then what's observing the thoughts? Because you can't be your thoughts or your feelings if you're able to observe them. So,
Exactly. That's
thank you.
right.
There was a comment saying, this is such a deeper explanation than what I've been giving my patients. I'm eager to dive into this model more fully. And then another question came in, when does ego form itself if we would say time exists?
When does ego form itself? Ooh, this is a big question. This is complicated. It depends when we want to start the timeline. Um, I would, for our purposes to just keep things simple, I would say the ego starts forming pretty much maybe around, I mean, right when we're born, essentially. Um, this idea of separateness comes up pretty early, where we realize as infants or toddlers that here I am in here and the world out there is separate from me. There's me and then there's mom or dad or the world and others and that just gets reinforced over time. But I think that sense of separateness is there um, from pretty early on. Like as soon as you find that you're hungry as an infant, you realize that you need something from the outside. That separateness starts to take shape. But I think, maybe the terrible twos is a point when the ego gets stronger. And then during adolescence, the ego gets much stronger. I would say it it like solidifies during adolescence. That's when the identity really starts to take shape and take hold. Um, so the ego's kind of there from the start, but so is the awareness, so is the soul. They're both always there. And, there's a lot of factors that go into this, but yeah, essentially, as we go through our lives, there's this sort of battle between the ego and the soul for the driver's seat, you could say.
Thank you.
Hmm. Should I move on to the next slide?
Yes, please. Oh,
Okay.
one question came in.
One
So,
more question. Yeah, what's up?
what happens when the solidification of ego during adolescence is thwarted? And I'm going to add to this. This is the person's question. So, what happens when you thwart it? But I can't remember in one of our discussions we had or one of the talks that we're doing here, but there's this idea that this ego is an enemy and we're trying to get rid of this ego.
Yeah,
And there's another where we've had this conversation where it's about integration versus
yeah,
annihilating the ego. So
that's
maybe
right.
in the answer to this question, if you can review that as well. And the question here was, what happens when the solidification of ego during adolescence is thwarted? Because so many people hear that this ego has such a negative connotation to it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with ego. The ego, it's helpful for the ego to develop normally. So ideally, you don't want to thwart the ego. It's going on a process of development throughout our lifetime, and that's useful because that helps us navigate life and be stable and hold a job and have relationships and be happy and all those things. So we're not trying to get rid of the ego. We're just trying to put it in its place. We're just trying to bring the ego, um, put it into the passenger seat rather than the driver's seat. That's all that there is to it. Um, so what happens when the ego is thwarted in adolescence? I don't know. It depends on how much awareness that adolescent has. Um, if the ego, if the ego gets thwarted, then that person might push back. I mean, it might become stronger, or if you try to fight the ego will come back with the same force, equal and opposite force. If you bypass the ego in adolescence, then it doesn't have a chance to fully develop. So, um, there's got to be a balance. Um, Ideally, when we're young, we can be exposed to these types of truths, these teachings, this type of information, and we can learn that the ego is not who we really are, that we're the awareness, but we still will allow the ego to unfold as it needs to for our healthy development. I hope that makes sense and answers the question.
They had some follow-up questions while you were
Okay.
sharing this. So one was on this track, not with a conscious intention, but if parents who are unconscious do that out of fear, when can that identity start to form again? And does a person have to develop a sense of self identity ego later in life before one can integrate it?
Okay, let me see if I can read this. If parents who are unconscious do that out of fear. So you're saying if a parent is trying to thwart their child's ego out of fear, when can that identity start to form again? I'm not sure I understand that question. Um, I mean, if the parent is doing something out of fear, then most likely that fear is going to perpetuate itself. What you resist persists, right? As Lauren said. And so if you fear something and you act on that fear, then that fear is just going to manifest eventually. Um, yeah. Does a person have to develop a sense of self, identity, ego later in life before one can integrate it? I think maybe. I think they probably happen simultaneously. In terms of integration, we're talking about bringing the awareness to the ego. We're going to talk more about how to bring those two together later in this conversation. Um, I apologize, but these questions are a little bit challenging to understand. Um, if anyone has some insight into that.
We'll have you
Okay.
continue into your slides.
Okay. Um, oops. Okay. Just trying to get rid of this chat here. Okay. So these are all many technologies that we can use. Um, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble here with my mouse. Okay. So because we have these four aspects of our being and we're moving towards the soul aspects of those, the be aware, quiet the mind, open the heart, relax the body, I basically just divided that up and put under each category what I felt maybe leans towards that, a technique that leans toward kind of cultivating that quality. Um, but they all kind of work on each other because the system is one, right? Everything is one. And so if we, like I said last time, if we relax the body, that's inevitably going to lead to the opening of the heart and the quieting of the mind and the increasing of awareness. So if you do one, if you pull one lever, the other levers are gonna move naturally. So it doesn't really matter where you start. Um, what I think is more important is to figure out what is your personality and what works for you, what aligns best with your being, with your nature. If you're more of a mental person, more of a thinker, then maybe some of these techniques for the mind are going to work better for you. If you're more of a heart-centered person or a feeler, then the techniques under the section of open the heart might resonate more with you. If you're more body-based or instinct-based or action-based, then maybe the techniques under relax the body might work better. Again, ultimately, they're all going to lead to the same place, but your entry point, I think, is important. You want to find something that resonates with you. Ideally, you can have a balance of all four, and ultimately you will. All four will harmonize sooner or later. But as a way in, you might want to figure out what resonates best. I'm going to start with the be aware, and I want to go kind of touch on some of these specifically and have a conversation about them so that people can get a deeper sense of kind of what are these techniques that we can use. So be aware, I think, is the most important one because that's what we are. We are awareness. And how do you be aware? You just have to be aware. There's really no way to explain how to do that, but everybody intuitively knows how to do that because that's what we are. So being aware of being aware, take a moment to, rather than being so outer focused all the time, take a moment and turn that light of awareness in on itself and point it towards awareness so that awareness can see itself. Um, that's, you can't really, awareness can't really see itself, but at least you can turn the searchlight in and be aware that you exist. And that's what that means. Practicing the presence. Could mean either being present, right? Being here now, or practicing feeling the presence of a higher power as you go through your day. For those of you who are interested in the technique of practicing the presence, I love this old monk, Brother Lawrence, 16th century Christian monk, who this was his entire practice. He would just practice feeling the presence of God in everything that he did, whether he was washing the dishes, walking outside, sweeping the floor. He would just hold this knowing that there was a higher power always there, present with him. And that led to his realization. Um, Meditation is a big one. There's so many different types of meditation. But I think the important thing to understand is what is the purpose of meditation? Ultimately, meditation is a very distilled technique for creating awareness. It's for creating a little bit of space between you, the awareness, and the mind and the feelings and the physical sensations, right? You, the awareness, and the mind, heart, body. What meditation is designed to do is to create that space between those aspects so that you have more awareness of yourself. Now, there's many different meditation techniques out there, but ultimately that's what they're designed to do. Meditation is definitely kind of the most popular method for self-realization, and for good reason, because it seems to be it's a distilled way of getting in touch with that awareness. But it's not the only way, because there's many other ways to bring awareness than meditation. So for those of you who are struggling with meditation or you're just not feeling aligned with it, that's okay. There's a lot of other ways in. Stillness is important because awareness is stillness. Everybody has a still point within them, and that is their true nature. That still point might be in a different place for each person. Maybe it's behind their head or above their head or around them. They feel that, okay, this, when I focus right here, this is where it's still. Other people, that stillness is in the third eye, or maybe it's in their heart, or it's in their solar plexus. Everybody has a still point within them, and that's the true nature, that's awareness. So the idea is get in touch with the stillness within and anchor yourself there, and that stillness will grow and eventually encompass everything. So stillness could mean that. It could mean getting in touch with the point of stillness within. It could mean what Jesus said, be still and know that I am God. It could mean, what Ramana Maharshi said of stillness is kind of the ultimate technique. Be still. What more is there? Be still. Now that doesn't mean be physically still. That means, I mean, it could, but that also means be still internally. Get in touch with that place that's quiet inside, that isn't moving, that exists beyond the mind. Third eye focusing. Um, Yogananda says when someone asked him, what can I do when I'm not meditating, if I can bring kind of the awareness throughout my day? And he used to say, just put your attention right here at the third eye. Just hold it there as much as you can, because this is the center of awareness, the center of consciousness. So if you focus here, there's a chakra here that opens. If you focus on the third eye, that's a way to keep awareness with you at all times. Witnessing consciousness, trusting intuition, we're going to get into those later. Intuition is my plan for the next one, for the next webinar. Witnessing consciousness will be on the next slide. So any questions about being aware before we move on?
There was just a comment about Thich Nhat Hanh's presence, mindfulness, and meditations are wonderful teachings as well.
Nice. Yes, absolutely. There's so many wonderful techniques. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. Um, but a lot of these, most of these are things that I relied on myself and that I offer to others as methods for self-realization. Quieting the mind. Again, how do you quiet the mind? You quiet it by watching the mind. If you fight with the mind, if you argue with the mind, if you try to change the mind, manipulate it in any way, avoid it, it's just going to come back stronger. Now, you're welcome to practice that. It might help to some degree, but ultimately, you want to just detach from it completely. Now, that doesn't mean you don't use it, but you just don't hook into it. And so, all these techniques that I've listed here are ways to quiet the mind. So, the first one I wrote, self-inquiry. That's Ramana Maharshi's method, um, where he says, okay, if you can't be still, if you can't if you can't hang out in the silence, then here's something you can try. Ask yourself, who am I? And see if you can get in touch with the awareness behind the mind. Now, the self-inquiry method is not pure awareness. It's using the mind to unhook from the mind. It is like using a thorn to remove a thorn, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. But ultimately, it is using the mind to try to get out of the mind. So questions like, who am I? Or what I actually prefer more than who am I is what am I? Because that takes away the sort of personal sense. You know, the ego feels like it's a personal thing, it's an identity. And so who am I can sometimes make the ego feel, a little bit reified. So what am I is a really good question. Am I the mind? I can't be the mind because the mind is constantly changing and I'm still here witnessing it. So that can't be me. Am I the heart? No, I can't be the heart because the energy is constantly flowing and changing, and I'm still here watching it all. So I can't be the heart. Am I the body? No, because all my life, my body has been changing. The cells have been regenerating every 7 years, as science tells us. So 7 years ago, I have a totally different body than I do now. So I can't be the body because I've watched myself grow and change over time. So what am I? Well, the only thing that's left, that's pure awareness, right? That's the self-inquiry method. Introspection, contemplation, basically nearly synonyms of each other. Introspection, I would say, is just looking inward and analyzing ourselves. Contemplation is more like maybe looking outward and being in touch with nature and just observing rather than analyzing. Reading or study or writing, those are great ways to quiet the mind because it allows us to express or release something. Lectio Divina is an ancient Christian method of reading that I really like because you read a passage, then you take it in, you let it sink in, you let it roll around intuitively, you get the deeper meaning of it, and then you read another line. Maybe there's a prayer involved or an affirmation involved or something like that. Psychotherapy, obviously, I'm a fan. I think psychotherapy, as a number of these as well, a number of these techniques, they all kind of work on all of them, all layers. Psychotherapy is one of those that works on all layers. Um, Examining evidence. This comes back to what I said in the second webinar, where um, the innermost layer of the ego is false beliefs. So a really good technique that I use um, with students and with therapy clients is examine the evidence. Okay, what is the belief that you have about yourself? I'm unworthy. There's something wrong with me. I'm better than everybody else. Whatever. I'm a separate self. Okay, examine the evidence. How do you know? How do you know that that's true? Is there evidence to support that? So it's sort of like logical thinking, being objective rather than being caught in the story or the feelings. Um, and that ties into what I wrote here, the work. That's Byron Katie's method that I'm alluding to here. She works directly with the false beliefs. So her method, she has these four questions. The first one is it true? Okay, you have this belief or this assumption. Is it true? Can you be absolutely certain that it's true? All right, that's Byron Katie's method. So quieting the mind, there's lots of ways to do this. Mantra is another one. Um, Basically just taking a word or a phrase and repeating it over and over again. What that does is it just focuses the mind and it just quiets everything else. Um, I know transcendental meditation uses mantra to quiet the mind, being alone, solitude. So there's so many different ways to quiet the mind. Any questions about that?
Yes, there were some questions during the be aware and the quiet the mind that came up.
Okay.
I was wondering what it is to be not aware. Can you describe that?
So to be not aware, first of all, everybody has some level of awareness. Nobody can be fully unaware. If someone was fully unaware, they would cease to exist. And that's just not possible. So there's always some level of awareness. But what I mean by being unaware is really being unconscious. It means being run on autopilot. And everybody knows this feeling when they kind of go about their day and life gets a hold of them and they forget that they're even there. Their body's just acting on its own. Their feelings are running amok. Their mind is doing what it's doing. And they're just totally caught up in the story, forgetting that they are there witnessing it all, that they're experiencing it all. They forget that they are the subject and they mistake themselves for the objects, which is the world or the body or the feelings or the thoughts. Those are objects that are all floating around within the field of awareness. That field of awareness is pure subjectivity. That's what we are. And so being unconscious means forgetting that we are beings rather than doings. Was there another question, Lauren?
There's some comments and questions. I'm going to have you invite you to just continue, and I'll just keep collecting those.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So open the heart. Let's move on to that one. How do you open the heart? Ultimately, you have to feel your feelings. So the heart is the realm of energy. You could say it's our aura, it's our energy field, it's the dimension of energy that we are operating in. So how do you open the heart? You got to feel. And a lot of people don't want to feel. And that's a huge stumbling block on the spiritual path. So emotional releasing is a huge method for opening the heart. Notice what feelings are arising in the body and can you allow them? Can you really feel them? Without judging them, without defending against them or shutting them down or avoiding them. Um, that's something I do a lot in my work, is helping people release their emotions. And in order to do that, you have to dissolve the defenses, all the ways in which we block feelings from flowing. You have to work through those so that the energy can flow. Now, the heart is open. You want to keep the heart open all the time. There is never a reason to close the heart. Now, it might seem like this is too much. I can't take it. I got to close my heart. Okay, do that if you need to. But at the end of the day, you want to keep your heart open as much as possible. And that means keeping the energy flowing, allowing your feelings, not judging any of them. Every emotion has value, it has a role to play. Now, a lot of people struggle with like anger, for example. But anger is a valid emotion too. I'm just using that as one example. Anger is valid because it tells us when we've been violated. Now, a lot of people have trouble with anger because they think it's going to lead to some hurting of someone or some destruction. And that might happen if we're unaware. But being aware of anger doesn't mean acting on the anger. It means allowing the anger to flow through, witnessing it without releasing it, without expressing it onto someone else, right? Projecting it, or without suppressing it within us. That's just one example. So emotional releasing is critical. Other ways to open the heart, you know, make connections, talk to people, be social, serve, serve others. Um, that's an amazing way to open the heart because it gets you out of your ego. What is the goal of self-realization? It's to dissolve the ego, dissolve the veil that tells you that you're separate from others. So serving others is a very useful way to kind of grind down that ego so that we can see that we're all connected and we're all one. Relationships are a huge factor, and that involves, you know, friend relationships with friends. That means romantic relationships, marriage. That also means kids and child rearing. Those are fantastic technologies for self-realization if we're oriented in the right way. Because especially raising kids, I mean, what better way to work through our own, egoic tendencies than to have kids? They are just gonna bump up against every egoic thing that we have in our body. So having kids, relationships are huge technology for waking up. That includes, work too, career, vocation. Um, these are all ways, having purpose. These are all ways to open the heart. Another way of opening the heart is, being creative, getting in touch with art, music, chanting, things like that. That was one that brought me on the spiritual path, was my musical inclinations. That's what showed me that there was more to life than just these five senses. So, creative pursuits, things like that. Energy healing, of course, the heart is the realm of energy. So, any healing you can do on the energetic side of things is going to be useful. Self-care, meaning loving yourself in terms as well as loving others, being kind, charity, volunteering, these are kind of self-explanatory, being with animals. And then centering prayer is not one that I've personally used, but I've heard a lot of great things about. Um, it was, I think, uh, revived by Thomas Keating in the 70s. It's an old technique that he revived, but it basically is just bringing your awareness to your heart, saying a phrase or a word, and just feeling the presence of the divine in your heart. So those are ways to open the heart. Any questions about that?
I had a comment that you talked about like this letting go or this release when when the heart opens. Some of my experience and observation in my practice on two levels. One is sometimes when you do acupuncture on somebody, out of nowhere, all of a sudden emotions come up, either anger or tears, and they don't have any thought with it. It's just feelings. And I
Yeah,
usually explain it like it's in the word emotions, energy, emotion. So as you
yeah,
move the energy, it comes up. And then looking at your process here in my practice, when you start to become aware of your thoughts and feelings and then relax into them, meaning allowing yourself to feel them without getting identified with the feelings. So there's the
yes,
observing the feelings, noticing the feelings. So you're no longer pushing them away, suppressing them, depressing them, or projecting them out. They now have freedom to move again. And they, again, using the word emotion, energy, emotion, the way I explain it to myself and my clients is that emotions nature is to move up and out, and you're
yes.
meant to experience it, and in like 90 seconds it's through you. But if you push it, suppress it, depress it, then it gets stuck in your tissues.
Hmm.
So when you do this practice where you bring awareness and you keep changing the thinking or shifting thinking to feeling, because you can't think your way through this, you feel your way through it, then the emotions release you. Like they just move up and out. I don't even think we let go of the feelings.
Yes.
I feel that these energy just moves up and out, and all of a sudden, sound and tears will come through us. That's
Yes.
been my experience and what I see on my table.
That's well said. And like I said in the beginning, these are not doings. These are more undoings.
Yeah.
They seem like doings, but they're really undoings.
And to touch on the doing, one of the interviews I did with Amit Goswami, he's written several books. He's a quantum physicist in his 80s. And his term often is do, be, do, be. And what he says is there's this, and this is what I do in my practice because I have that left brain at like, I'm not, I've never found it easy just to be. When I read the book, The Power of Now, I was like, that's great. Now I need a book on how to now, right? Once I understood the power of now. And so for me, I need a little bit of doing to get into the beingness. And your terminology is perfect that just clicked. It's not so much that I'm doing, although it looks it, I'm doing through an activity.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's
that's great.
exactly right. Yeah, and as we progress on the path, you become less and less dependent on doing, and you become more and more in the
Yeah.
being. Your practice will become more about being than about doing. But in the beginning, if you are still having trouble relaxing the body, opening the heart, quieting the mind, being aware, you might need to be active. You might need a technique, and that's what I'm offering here.
So there's a comment after suffering trauma, grief, or loss, we unconsciously or consciously aim to close our hearts as a form of protection. As this happens, we close ourselves to life force, energy, and love. This creates dis-ease and a loss of relationships, a loss of prosperity and thriving. And
Yeah.
then another question, I strive to keep an open heart within myself, but when I extend this openness to the world, it often gets crushed by the rampant selfishness around me. Eventually, this selfishness affects me personally. How can I maintain an open heart in such an unconscious world?
Yes. That's a very common issue that a lot of people struggle with. So I empathize. Um, Ultimately, you want to keep those emotions flowing, whatever it is that you're feeling. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's grief, maybe it's anger about the selfishness of the world. You have to feel that. You have to let yourself feel those feelings because that's what's here. That's reality. But perhaps the reason why the heart is closing or those feelings become intolerable is because we have defenses or we have false beliefs that are blocking the ability to really feel the heart. So maybe the belief is things should be different than the way they are. Well, that's not true. Things are the way they are. And it's only the ego that thinks that things should be different than the way they are. The ego likes to overlay onto reality and assume how life ought to look. It says, well, this is right, this is wrong, this is how life should be, and I'm going to resist or reject anything that doesn't align with that belief. Well, then you've just created a prison for yourself. You've made your world smaller. So instead of believing that, notice the belief and let it go. Examine the evidence. Is it true? Can you be absolutely certain that that belief is true, that things ought to be different than the way they are? Can you accept this moment? Can you be here now? So that's what I would say.
Can you respond to that? It seems there's a lot to do. Funny because you're saying it's not a doing thing, an undoing thing, but the perception could be there's a lot to do, but how not to make it a stressy thing.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you brought this up because, yes, I'm offering a lot of strategies and techniques here. You don't have to do all of them. I'm just trying to bring your awareness to the overarching principles here of be aware, quiet the mind, open the heart, relax the body. What you want to do is use your intuition, and we're going to talk about intuition in the fourth webinar. Use your intuition to decide what's the best fit for you. I'm giving you a menu of all these different techniques, and there are more, but I'm giving you a menu of these different things you can try. Try them out until you find something that works, and then hone in. Or if you know your personality already, if you know you're more heart-centered or more head-centered, then zero in on some of those techniques and see if you can make some headway. So you don't have to do all these things. Use discernment and keep things simple. You know, just pick one or two if you need to, and try them out and see how they work. So this is not meant to overwhelm. This is not meant to, make you do a lot of things. This is just kind of a big picture overview of what a lot of people use and what I've found to be helpful. And it's, you get to pick and choose how you want your path to look.
Thank you. Can you
Okay.
say more on feeling the heart and what does that mean to you?
Feeling the heart means allowing energy to flow, and that includes feelings. So feel your feelings. Whatever it is that you're feeling, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. That's what it means.
I'm going to just add to it if I may. Like it's
Yeah.
again in my the approach that I've observed, this notice and accept, choose again, and the accepting is feeling your feelings. It's leaning into them, relaxing into them. Michael Singer, who's written The Untethered Soul, I think he calls it lean into or relax into your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just allow them to be experienced and getting practice at not judging them, thinking I shouldn't feel this way, to experience them. And my experience of feeling the feelings by and really feeling the feelings is observing myself feel the feelings is they act as portals to presence. So at first I
Yes,
think the fear of the actual feeling I'm fearing to feel is worse, like the fear
I
of
agree.
is worse than the feeling. And to me, I don't know if this is true. I'm going to tell you what I think, but I also am very aware this is probably not how it is, but it just sits nice in my brain.
Okay.
Just to clarify when I say this, there's no way I can know this is what's happening, but it feels good to explain it this way to myself and to others. Is that when I'm that those uncomfortable feelings that can act as portals to presence, when I'm observing the feelings, the mere practice of observing the feelings, observing, witnessing them, tunes me into the witness consciousness. When I'm fully identified with the feeling and I'm mistaken that I am my thoughts and feelings, I'm at the full effect of them and I suffer. When I create a little space and I get practice at just feeling the feelings, and there's so many tools that you're sharing to feel the feelings, lean into them, relax the body into them, and breathe. Be willing to feel the uncomfortable feelings. It's counterintuitive. You wouldn't think it, but as you lean into the feelings, you're tuning into the witness consciousness, and in that very nature is peace. So it's what does the alchemy. It's what brings up the peace. You're not letting it
Yes.
go. It's not the ego. You're just shifting from ego focus to witness consciousness focus by using the emotions as your guide into presence, into the witness consciousness. And then all of a sudden, you just feel expansion, freedom, peace, relief, whatever it is. You know, you've dropped the resistance, as Byron Katie is saying, you're no longer fighting with the thought or feeling, you're witnessing it. Doesn't mean you like it, doesn't mean you're resigned to it, you're just leaning into it. And that
Mm-hmm.
whole process, so hence trust the process, has a shift in perception, shift into you tuning into your nature. I think that witness consciousness is what's doing the alchemy, metabolizing those uncomfortable feelings.
That's right. That's beautifully said. The awareness or the witnessing is the key to all of this. It's the linchpin to everything. Um, Opening the heart, it's not a doing, it's just witnessing the feelings. And the feelings are intelligent, they know what to do. Energy is designed to flow, it's always searching for a way through. It's design, its nature is to flow. So all you have to do is bring awareness to the feelings and they will do the rest. If you can relax around them, bring awareness to them, they will flow through, and then you're going to feel lighter.
Mhm.
And you're absolutely right. It's the anticipation of feeling that's much worse than the feeling itself. Oftentimes I find that the the hardest thing about feelings is the stories that we tell ourselves about them. Again, false beliefs. If I feel this thing, then I'm bad, or I'm weak, or something bad's gonna happen to me, or and that's all because of this conditioning that we've had from when we were younger. We were taught that these feelings were bad or that we were weak, and so we learned to suppress them. So, the feelings themselves are beautiful. They give life its richness. I think Michael Singer, in one of his talks, used this beautiful analogy of the piano. It's like you have eight notes in an octave, right? On a musical scale. So the emotions are the different notes of music. And that's what gives it its richness. If we don't feel our feelings, then we don't have any music. Or if we reject one feeling, like, oh, okay, joy and love are good, you know, but sadness and anger and fear are bad, then you only have the higher notes and you don't get to hear the lower notes. And it's the higher notes and the lower notes together that makes life rich and beautiful and dynamic and mysterious and allows for learning and growth. So you don't want to reject any feelings. Um, yeah, go
There's
ahead.
a comment to build on that is the idea that how emotions, emotion, energy, motion naturally flows up as we allow it to, meaning we're not resisting them anymore, so they get to flow up because that's their nature.
Yeah,
This
that's right.
individual has a concept of personal thoughts being like a lid on the pot or a plug in the line. These thoughts block that energy from flowing up and out. Is that a valid analogy?
That's right. Yes, that's exactly right.
I will add on this alchemy idea because you really, for me, I really had to learn to trust and continue to trust the process. And the metaphor I have, just to explain, to build on what Ellie's saying about relaxing, feeling the feelings, and then um, the alchemy happens on its own. It's like when we bite an apple, the ego, I have to pick up and chew the apple, bite and chew. That's a choice. But the digestion of the apple has nothing to do with ego Lorne Brown. I don't say I need a pause while I release salivary enzymes. I can't go on a bike ride because I got to focus on the acid in my stomach. I can't go to bed because I need to absorb all the nutrients from the apple I just ate out of my intestines. There's another aspect of me, my autonomic nervous system, that metabolizes and digests that apple. Yes, I have to pick up and chew, but after that, a whole other aspect of me does it, whether I, Eagle Lauren, want it or not. All we have
Yes.
to do, and that's why I call it the notice, accept, choose again. We have to notice we're triggered. We have to use tools to lean into these uncomfortable feelings. So accept these feelings. That's biting and chewing. And then the metabolism of those feelings is your witness consciousness. It's a whole other aspect. I don't think Lauren Brown, I don't think any of us let go of shit. I don't think we let go of anything. I think it let goes of us. It's another aspect of us that does the digestion metabolism. All we have to do is have the skill set, practice, and courage, willingness to feel our uncomfortable feelings, use these tools in practice. And then another aspect, call it your higher self, call it your witness consciousness. It does the alchemy. It digests and metabolizes these unconscious programs that don't serve us or these unwanted feelings, not the ego version of Lauren. That's my
Exactly.
metaphor with the apple. And what I think you're sharing today is you just
Yes.
got to use these tools. That's picking up and chewing. Everything else, just get out of the way and it will happen on its own without you needing to do anything.
Yes. Yes. That's right. What you're getting at is the higher self, right? It's not the ego that can do these things because the ego is the problem. That's what's
Yeah.
getting in the way. It's the higher self. It's the awareness, which is synonymous with grace. It's grace.
Yeah.
That's the wild card here is grace. There's this other element that we can't predict. Um, but grace is awareness. We are grace. And so that grace is always here. It's always acting on us. We just have to take the bite of the apple. And then grace, right? Divine intelligence, awareness does the rest.
And it reminds me what you said at the beginning is just to change the seats on the bus. The ego's kind of in the front running the show and the higher self's in the back. And these practices are just shifting the seats on the bus. So the higher self's in the front. You're not getting rid of the ego. You're just changing the relationship and who's in charge.
Exactly.
You say grace. That reminds me, Phil's book is what Grace Happens. I
Yeah.
see Phil's on today that you edited. So shout out to Philip Weber. He has a book called Grace Happens. Excellent book. And he's episode 121 on the Conscious Fertility podcast.
Yes.
And Ellie's episode 116. Now that I've connected now the grace part from what you just said now.
Yes. Yes.
All
Yes.
right. There's some more questions here I'd like to bring up from our group here.
Okay.
Uh, Oh, just a comment. Great conversation. I'll be back next time. They have a meeting 10. Okay. Allowing
Okay.
feelings to course through without resistance. Yeah. Don't you think then, Ellie, that the undoing part is to take the resistance out of the field? Like when you fight with reality and going to Byron Katie, she says when you fight with reality, you suffer. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you say, using, is it true in her process or these tools, we're basically no longer fighting with reality. So resistance drops. And
Mm-hmm.
we see this in electrical systems, right? Our electrical engineers here would know this better than I, that when there's resistance in an electrical system, the electricity doesn't flow as well. And when the resistance drops, the energy flows quicker and better.
Mm-hmm.
That's like us too, right? The emotions and the thoughts that we fight with add resistance. So we don't feel good. We call it chi stagnation in Chinese medicine. And when the resistance drops, we now have chi flow, and that feels good.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody says sex seems to relax, open, and calm us. Why doesn't it make us more aware? Probably not for
If
everybody.
Yeah, sex is an interesting one. I mean, there's a lot of energy in sex. It can make you more aware if you use it in the right way. But the sexual impulse is a very powerful energy. And so you have to know what you're doing. Um, you have to be careful. You have to be ready to wield that type of energy, but you can utilize it to bring more awareness. It is a technique if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing and you mess around, it could cause some problems, so you want to be careful. Should I talk about this just last thing,
Please.
relax the body?
Yes.
So relax the body, that's the last piece. I put breath work in here. We talked about that last time. Deep breathing is really important. Slowing down the breath, again, by watching the breath. That's how you slow down the breath. Really. So stretching, yoga postures, these are paths. Yoga nidra, which is basically like a body scanning technique. You go through each muscle and you just release any tension, and then you work your way through the body that way. For those of you who are interested in Yoga Nidra, there's a great YouTube channel it's by Samaneri Jayasara, and she has some beautiful Yoga Nidras that you can follow along with. Um, of course, Tai Chi, Qigong, those are popular. I never practice those, but I know a lot of people who do, and they find it really, really helpful for relaxing the body and increasing the chi flow, right? Tension relaxation. Um, This is something I got from Yogananda's writings. He discovered this principle of tension and relaxation. So if you focus on a particular muscle or somewhere that's tense, if you put your awareness there and you slowly, slowly tense very gradually, you don't want to do it jerky because then you can get hurt. But if you very gradually tense that area until you start to vibrate a little bit, and then you relax, that's going to bring a much deeper relaxation than if you had just started with relaxing. So you're basically, by doing tension relaxation, you're infusing that area of the body with energy and then releasing it. And that energy is kind of spreading out. And that's very, very useful if you have a lot of muscle tension or if you're holding things. And relaxing the body helps you to get in touch with the deeper dimensions of your being. So it's a huge, really important piece. Um, you know, proper diet, sleep, exercise, being in nature, those are kind of self-explanatory. Massage, acupuncture, you name it. Relax, release is what Michael Singer talks about. Just relax the body and let it flow. Just let it release. So we kind of already touched on that. And urge surfing is one I wanted to get to because that's a psychological principle, mostly used with addiction or OCD, that kind of thing. But I find it to be a really useful spiritual tool. Basically, the idea is every urge or impulse or emotion that you have is like a wave, and it's got three aspects. So there's this increase of the wave, there's the peak and the plateau, and then there's the decrease of the wave. Now, when you notice an urge to do anything arising in your body, urge to have sex, urge to eat, urge to go to sleep, urge to say something in a conversation, whatever, notice where that urge is coming from, locate it in your body, relax around it, and watch the urge come up and then come down. If you don't engage with it, the wave will come up, it will peak, and then it will come down. And then the next time that urge comes, it will be smaller and shorter. And that's how you extinguish these urges. If you do engage with it, let's say that urge comes up and it's so hard not to act on it, so you go into it, it's going to come down immediately because you've acted on it. But the next time that urge shows up, it's higher and stronger. So you're strengthening it by acting on it. So the idea is you want to relax, notice the urges, where they're originating from, and just let them flow without engaging with them. And that's how you extinguish a lot of these egoic actions. So any questions before we move on?
Yes. Um, this is to you, myself, and those in the group here. Minding the younger generation when raising kids, what age do you think is too soon to introduce these aspects so they don't have as much of a load to work with and unlearn at later age?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think start as soon as they can begin to understand these concepts. Um, we're talking about just being here. We're talking about our true nature, our reality. Every child is equipped with a body, heart, mind, and spirit. So the sooner they know how to use those tools and be aware, the better off they're going to be in their life. Um, so I don't think there's really a need to wait unless they just, they don't have the brain development to be able to understand these things or practice these things. As soon as they, as soon as they can grasp these concepts, I'd say introduce them.
I will add that I subscribe to the idea that you, as the adult, so the parent, do their work because we're like Wi-Fi and that impacts our children. So if we can hold the space and be conscious, I just believe the vibration, then we can hold the space for whatever they're going through and we can model it. So rather than needing our children to be a certain way, again, when we're conscious, we're able to hold the space and not react to what's going on with our children. Um,
Absolutely.
so I think it always comes back to, I kind of get this from the Byron Katie work and the conscious work that I've been exposed to, that everybody else is kind of a bit of an illusion. You only have your universe, your internal world to work through. There's like three kinds of business: your business, others' business, and God's business. And if you're in God's business and others' business, who's minding your business? So
Yes, yes.
really the work is you just got your work to do, and then you're able to be present for whatever your kids show up with.
Yeah, I second that. The best thing you can do for your kids is be a model, be an example, because that's gonna make the greatest impact on them. Absolutely.
Somebody shared, my experience is that babies are more conscious and present than adults. I start babies with stillness, quiet, and doing energy work on them. That sounds beautiful.
Hmm.
I remember my
That's wonderful.
children like early on how I was um, in awe how they just notice things that I was not noticing. They'd ask something and they see something, and I'd be like, how did they even notice that? Right? They were just see because they didn't have all the clutter and all the busy thoughts. Maybe I don't know what's in
Yeah.
their mind, and
Yes.
watching them see a bee on the flower for the first time, like just to be able to experience that again through them watching that, like you can see how we develop all these filters, and watching them when
Absolutely.
young do that, I was like amazed at that. So I agree with that comment that they can be conscious. Somebody
Yeah,
should,
I call that innocent wisdom.
innocent wisdom. That's nice. I have a current situation. Hold on, moved here. I have a current situation inside of myself in relationship to my son. This conversation very helpful and freeing. Thank you for the question and the answer.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And then somebody said, yeah, it was the filters he was referencing. Great. Thank you for your inputs. All right.
Great.
Continue on, please, if there's anything to continue.
Wonderful. Yeah,
We have about
there's
15 minutes left, Ellie, just
okay.
for time.
Okay. Woo, goes faster than I expect. Okay, so here's how I want to tie everything together. All these tools, all these techniques, if they're done right, again, everybody's path is different, so there's no absolutes. So I just want to start with that. But if they're doing those techniques right, then it will lead to this. It will lead to this final step before realization, um, which is essentially the witnessing consciousness and the clearing of karma. And if you put those two together, you get surrender. And that's the very last step before awakening or self-realization. So witnessing consciousness essentially means being aware. It means identifying as the awareness itself, the backdrop of life, the source, the origin of who we are, and witnessing all the other things that happen in the world. So we anchor into the still point within, the witness, and then we shine that light of awareness onto the darkness, which is the ego. We shine that light onto the tension in the body, onto the emotions, onto the thoughts that come and go. And that is ultimately what surrender is all about. It's about witnessing, and that's the final step. Um, so it's about bringing the light to the darkness. And this is a really important point. There are some spiritual paths that only focus on the light, only focus on the awareness. And those are useful, they're helpful. But the tendency for those paths, if you only focus on the awareness, is that there isn't the clearing of karma. The ego is kind of being left alone in the corner. And so you might have these glimpses of your true nature as awareness, but you're not going to be able to stay there. You won't be able to abide in that awareness because eventually, sooner or later, that ego is going to come and pull you back out and catch you again. And so you need to clear that karma, which basically means release the tension, release the feelings, let the mind pass by without identifying with it. That it's the sweet spot between the two, between the light and the darkness. If you only clear karma, and there are some paths that do that too, they're just focused on clear karma, clear karma, clear karma, and you'll awaken. Now that's very useful. That's really important. But that's also not ideal because you could be clearing karma forever. Because if you're not bringing the awareness, then as you're clearing karma, you're generating more karma because you're not aware of what you're doing. So you have to bring both of them together, the light and the darkness. If you only have light, the darkness is here. If you only have darkness, then what's the point? You need to bring the light to the darkness. That's the transformation. And darkness isn't bad in this case. It's just the unconscious or the ego. It's not like a bad thing. When you do that, you get surrender, which is also integration. So what happens is as you bring the light of awareness to the darkness of the ego, what starts to happen is the ego begins to open up and dissolve, and it will dissolve into the light. So whereas before there were two of you, right? You had this ego and then this witness. The ego gets absorbed into the light and becomes the light, and then there's one. That's what happened to me. That's what I believe happens to everyone at the end of the day. So all those techniques that we just talked about are eventually going to get us to this step, and then this step will get us across the finish line.
You remind me of I think it's a Buddhist saying that light transforms darkness. And my interpretation is darkness are these uncomfortable feelings and subconscious programs that don't serve us. And the light is awareness. So light transforms the darkness by
Yeah,
bringing awareness to these aspects of ourselves. They get transformed, is
that's
what I
right.
heard you say.
Exactly. If you're in a dark room, what do you do to illuminate it? You just turn on the light. You don't play around in the darkness. You just turn on the light.
And
That's all you need to do to illuminate
to,
and eliminate the darkness.
to use that metaphor, some people go, but I've had this for 40 years. And I always say, if you went into a room that's been dark for 40 years and you turn on the light, how many years does it take for the darkness to dissipate? And they go, it's instant. I go, yes, it doesn't matter how many years you've had this.
Exactly.
Just bring the light, turn on the light, and it's
That's right.
present.
And that light is what we are, and it's always there. And that's why awakening is always available and can happen at any moment. It's always present. That's the grace of God that's always here. So I wanted to do
Meditation.
a little bit of a demonstration of witnessing consciousness. We might not have much time. Um,
Somebody had a question, just why does it,
yeah.
there's a comment, first of all, thanking you, Ellie, for this presentation. Every time I listen to you, you make the infallible fallible. I'm filled with gratitude for your
Oh,
presence. Thank you for
thank
your
you so
insights. To
much.
somebody else. um, Question, why does this process take so much work? Why is it so hard to awaken and realize our inheritance of heaven on earth?
The reason it takes so long is because we've been operating from the ego for so long without even realizing it. And it's just become second nature to us. We've become so identified, so attached to the ego, meaning our defenses, our subconscious feelings, our false beliefs, our separate self-identity, that we just take it for granted. And it takes a long time sometimes to undo that. But it also doesn't take a long time, and it just happens. It happens when it happens. It happens when we're ready. The key is bring the light of awareness to everything that you're doing. And that's really the bottom line. Um, and I want to do just one final slide here. Infinite paths to source. So I want to close by saying that there are so many different ways to get to the same place. There are infinite paths to awakening, and each person's path is totally unique and has never been done before. Just like how all rivers eventually reach the sea, all souls eventually come back home. And that's inevitable because if you think about it, what is it that we're realizing? We're realizing our true nature as awareness. And everything is awareness. That's all there is. That's what we are. So there's infinite ways to awareness. So trust your path. If it looks different from someone else's, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Your path is exactly right for you. Pema Chodron has a great quote: whatever is happening is the path to enlightenment. So essentially, all of life is the path. We might use these techniques for a while to get us to the witnessing consciousness, to get us to clear karma. But once we've got that witnessing consciousness, once we have that awareness, then everything becomes the spiritual path because we bring awareness to everything that we do. And as we bring awareness to everything that we do, everything gets transformed automatically. So life is the path. I hope that makes sense. So I say this to, give hope, because I know there's a lot of different strategies and techniques out there, but at the end of the day, just remember that you can't fail. It's inevitable that you will reach the sea, because that's what you are. So we have just a few minutes left. I'm curious if there's any more questions, or if we want to do maybe a really short
We got 5 minutes,
meditation.
so if you wanted to do a little guided meditation, that would be welcomed.
Okay. So let's do something really brief. So I'd like you to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, and take a deep breath, and just relax the body as best you can. And this works differently for everybody. There's a lot of variations to witnessing consciousness, but I'm just going to say it my way, and hopefully you can make it your own. I want you to zoom out so that you're on the outside looking in, so that you become the awareness. You are the field of awareness, and inside of you is the body and the feelings and the thoughts. So zoom out, whether it's in front, behind, around, just take a step back so that you can see the body in front of you. Notice the tension in the body. Bring awareness to the tension. Relax the tension as best you can. And see if you can feel any energy that starts to move through. Underneath tension is energy. That's why there's tension. It's blocking the energy flow. So bring your awareness to the tension, relax around it, and let the energy flow through. Notice the thoughts, and just look out from that point of awareness, from that stillness. Look at the body, look at the heart, look at the mind, and see that you are the awareness at the source. And now anchor yourself there. Anchor yourself into the awareness. Become the awareness. And then live from that place. And see if you can open your eyes and maintain that sense of separation, or that sense of space. That openness, that expansiveness, without interfering with anything else. Let the body do what it does. Let the feelings do what they do. Let the thoughts do what they do. And just witness. Everything else will take care of itself. That's surrender. That's integration. So thank you so much, everybody.
Ellie, thank you for preparing the presentation and leading us in that meditation. Thank you for all of you guys that showed up today, and for your questions. I want to remind you, so you can save the dates. We're doing this again. We'll continue on November 15th. So same time, 2 p.m. Pacific time for 90 minutes, and on December 20th, also at 2 p.m. So mark your calendars for this. We use the same Zoom link, so we will send you a reminder the day before and like 10 minutes before, so you can join us. If you know of other people that you want to share this with, feel free to share the Zoom link with other like-minded people as well. Um, Ellie also shared, he wanted to remind you that where was it at the bottom here? All donations, when you work with Ellie, you want to make any donations, he likes to support the Rancho Coastal Humane Society or your own local animal shelter when you work with Ellie. And again, he does psychotherapy for the state of California in person or online, and then conscious work around the world. I have a practice in Vancouver called AcuBounce where I do acupuncture and conscious work in person or remotely around the world as well. And we mentioned Philip Weber, which Ellie edited his books. He has two books out there, and they both have a podcast episode on the Conscious Fertility podcast, which we put in the Zoom. So just wanted to direct you to those resources, mainly November 15th, December 20th. Love to see you guys again, and please share with your friends the Zoom link if you like, and we can have more people join us.
Absolutely.
The recording for this will be on elirecht.com, his website. He'll put it up there, and if you are on his email newsletter, he'll usually send you a note to the newsletter when it's available. For those that are part of the Healthy Seminars practitioner community, this goes in the community library as well.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one more thing. Thank you so much, Lauren. That if you want to dive deeper into some of these concepts, I have some blogs on my website. If you go to my blog tab, if you want to learn more about defense mechanisms or emotions and subconscious feelings or false beliefs or karma, I have blogs on all of these things. So um, that might help someone if they're wanting to go deeper, or if you want to just reach out to me and you have a question and you want to talk about these things, that's more than welcome as well.
What's the plan for next session?
Well, the idea that I had was to talk about intuition because I think intuition is a really, really important piece of the spiritual path. It's basically our decision maker. It's the inner guide, and that's what determines the path that we take. So that's my plan.
Ellie, thank you very much for preparing this today and being our guide facilitating. Thank you all for joining us today and for your insightful questions.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was really fun. Take care.